So hello and welcome to our ongoing series of Icons of Relocation podcast. My name is Simon Johnston. I'm the CEO of Icon Relocation, a provider of world-leading home search, moving, technology and property management solutions. Now today, I'm delighted to be joined by two of my colleagues to discuss part of the Icon team that I sort of personally feel underlines some of the core differences that we have compared to many of our competitors. The two ladies with us today are Becca Gunn and Dani Roe, who have a key and critical role within our property support team. Furthermore, are central to really how we provide some of our outstanding service in a fast-moving market. So, morning to you both. How are you?
Good morning. All good, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, all good. It's great to have you here,
Good.
and great to be talking about this because we all know that property support is one of our key differentials, and what you guys do is amazing. So, perhaps Rebecca, could you start off just giving an overview about what do you do as a team?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably in the last couple of years, we introduced what is called the property support team to our company. And the reason for that really initially was to help support the coordinators in day-to-day tasks in terms of administration and research and booking viewings to support the relocations of the assignees. That's kind of evolved a little bit in the last year to 18 months in the fact that we now have a hub of research specialists, if you will. So we're connected into the market every day. We have a team of people that are doing research and speaking to agents and booking viewings and stuff. And that's allowed us it allowed us to be able to get information on the housing market on a daily basis, weekly basis, and track trends and where people are moving to, what property availability is like on the whole, what stock levels are like, which allows us to then feed back to the coordinators and best able to support their assignees in where they're going to be living. So it's really, as you said, the hub of our business now, and I'm really proud to head up the team.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hell of a lot, isn't it? I mean, on top of that, you have the close relationship with all the letting agents as well. Can you expand on that? Because I know, speaking to a lot of people, it's a really fast-moving market at the moment, and people are looking for how can we be proactive in making sure that we find the properties first. Could either of you two explore that a bit more for me?
Dani, do you want to go?
Yeah, of course. So usually when I get a research brief in, depending on the areas, there are a few agents that don't have corporate teams, for example. So there's a few agents in Richmond, which is quite big with one of our clients. So I would call them up and send them the brief directly. I've built quite good relationships with agents in those offices, so it then allows me to sort of get off-market options and things, which is sort of, that's the key with a corporate search, is trying to get the off-market options, giving the best
success. When you say off-market, sorry to jump in,
yeah,
it's a really good point. It's such a good point. I don't usually interrupt, but when you say off-market, what do you mean by that? Could you explain that in a bit more detail for those who are not quite aware?
Yeah, no problem. So an off-market option would be it hasn't been launched on the market yet. So the agent has acquired the property, they're looking to obviously rent it on behalf of the landlord, and they would send us that option before it even goes live on Rightmove, Zoopla, any of the online platforms. So they're the options that we like to get the most, because no one else knows about them, and we're sort of almost like getting first dibs, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And because the market is so competitive now, and it has been in the last year, it allows us to be able to have more options to present to clients which other general public don't have access to. So it gives us that edge in terms of showing them the properties that meet the brief. So that's really, really important to be able to have access to those. And we only have access to those because we have those existing relationships and ones that we're building in a market that don't necessarily have corporate teams, or those that we, because we've had previous conversations with them before. We're making contact with them on a regular basis, which enables us to have the access to the off-market. Not that they keep them secret in the back pocket, because obviously if they've got the properties, they want people to see them, because agents in the last few months sometimes haven't had any properties to show in a certain criteria. Right. So it's not that they're keeping anything back, but it's just if they know that they've got something on their radar, and Danielle's made that contact with that agent, because we have that existing relationship, they'll say, oh, actually we do have one that's coming on soon, I can probably get access to it tomorrow if I speak to the landlord. Do you want some information? Do you think it would work? I haven't got any marketing information for you, but from what we've discussed in terms of the brief, it does meet it. Do you want to go ahead and view? And in those situations, we can then make the call whether it's worth seeing without any physically like seeing pictures or anything like that, or pictures from like 4 years ago, for example.
Yeah.
So it's being able to get stuff and access to that, which is really, really key to basically showing the assignees a good working home search itinerary that's going to be ultimately successful and finding them a home.
Yeah, I have to say, because for those who don't know, I sit in the office obviously with all you and the whole team, and I know this is the case because you guys are on the phone all the time. I mean, you're just constantly on the phone, so it does translate. Talking about some of the things about how we gather the data. Now we have our own in-house case management system, and for a lot of people that go, well, okay, fascinating, but it kind of is, because it's the sort of glue that makes a lot of this work. Could maybe Becca, could you pick up on initially, and Dani, could you add to it what our case management system does and why is it useful in regard to gathering and sharing data?
Yeah, so ultimately, primarily what it's there for is to gather all of the assignees and cases that we work on a day-to-day basis. It's there for the coordinators to add information to as things happen throughout the timeline of their relocation. But more importantly, for us as a property support team, it's there to add properties to track those that we've researched, those that we're viewing and things like that. So we can add properties straight from Rightmove, Zoopla, any main agent player in the field currently. We can add everything to our system. And what that we can then do is associate that with a given case file, so an assignee or a group of assignees if we want to. So we can add the property to our system, and then we can give some feedback on that property. So if we're researching for a particular assignee on that day, we can add it to the system, but we can also associate it with that particular assignee and provide that feedback. So we can say we've accepted this property because it meets this person's brief, or if we've called up or we've explored it and it doesn't work or it's no longer available, because obviously we come across that, because if we're looking at search engines, it doesn't always necessarily mean that the properties that are active online, they're actually active in terms of being able to view and make an application for.
Yeah,
so we do have an accept or reject option when we're adding properties to the system, and if we're rejecting it, we have to provide some kind of reason as to why. And the reason that is important is rather than just only adding stuff that's accepted, is so that we can have a better picture as to reasons why we've rejected them. So is it that things are being on the market longer than they're actually really on the market for? Why was it rejected? Is there a reason? It might not be pet friendly. So we're building up other parts of information and data that we can then track and have a look at post the assignee's move or in 6 months' time, so that we can have a look and say, right, okay, so 30% of the properties in this area we rejected because they weren't pet friendly. Why? And that can then open a conversation as to, okay, this area isn't probably suitable for people that have got pets and or families or XYZ, things like that. The accepted part obviously is the most interesting for us, because it means that hopefully we can then book viewings, which we can then get our assignees in to hopefully make an application on the property. And that can be accepted from any point. So meets brief, it's pet friendly, it's compliant, because we have clients that we have to meet certain compliance criteria for, so we have to delve into a little bit more specifics on whether the property is suitable, anything really, location, accepts children, things like that. And then we can associate it with that person's case file, and then they're converted to a viewing and then converted to an offer and tenancy, so that that property stays throughout the whole journey of that person's case if we want it to. We then build an entire list kind of properties that are associated with that person. Okay. And then if they already exist on the system and we try to add it again, it will tell us. And then we can, if we want to add it for another person, we can then add it to another person, so we can then see who is looking at the same properties and why. Do they have the same brief? Are they from the same company? Are they in the same age demographic? Anything really. So it just enables us to it connects all the dots, and it's really a smart system, and it really does help us be efficient in our working, and then also aid us in have that market information, because we have access to it when we're adding it to the system. Yeah, no, it is extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, Dani, building on that, so we have all that information. Is it easy then to sort of share that information within the wider team? And does that allow you to sort of
communicate better with your colleagues or share intelligence?
Definitely. I mean, picking up on what Becca said about, when we add a property, if it's already been added, we can see who the assignee that it was assigned to, whether it was accepted, rejected, when we're trying to add it for someone else. So in this instance, the property had already been added and they were waiting on the agents come back and confirm if it was pet friendly, which wasn't the case for me. So I didn't need it to be pet friendly. So I was adding it. I'd already got a viewing for it. So it's good to see, the team are looking obviously at the same, properties, and we can see where they've been assigned. But also if we have two of us on research and we've got a similar brief, it allows us to share those options with each other as well. So it's almost like we're building the itinerary together. So I'll get sent 5 options and I'll share them with a member of the team and say, hey, have you considered these? Have you been sent these? I've got viewings at these times. Why don't you, and rather than sort of doing the job twice, it's making us more efficient because, when we've got like very similar briefs, we can share those properties.
Yeah, it's incredible. So the level of efficiency it brings in. Actually, on this, I thought this might be a quite good time because I've done a little bit of number crunching before this. I just would like to share this with you. In the last 90 days, so obviously since the start of the year, the property support team has researched and added into the system 3,327 properties. So that's properties that have been pulled in, looked at, considered, accepted, rejected, and moved on. In one period, in one day, 161 properties were researched and pulled into the system to consider compliance in one day. And of that day, 66 viewings were booked by you as a team. Now, that's only possible with extraordinary levels of efficiency. So
They're quite good, aren't they?
Pretty good.
Yeah,
you guys are amazing. I'm not even hiding this fact. A few more figures to add to this because I like figures. Figures are fun. Over that same period, 123 agents were added, different offices. In total, on the average last 2 years, over 6,000 different agents' offices have been tracked. So that's who we know they are, what the office is, the details, contacts, what properties they've had. Over 6,000 and over 30,000 properties have been considered and reviewed and pulled in. I mean, just to get some scale for anybody listening, that's what you guys are doing. I mean, what a level of efficiency. Which kind of goes on to another question. So we have this knowledge and awareness. And again, I look to you for guidance on this because you guys do really understand what's happening. How would you explain the housing market at the moment? Becca, could I start with you? What would be your overview?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you and I have spoken about this a couple of times on this podcast before, and unfortunately it's my opinion and the market itself hasn't really changed from what we've spoken about previously. It's still the same kind of situation. It's still very competitive. There is still situations where agents are leaving things on the open market when aren't necessarily available to view. However, it's allowed us to be able to adjust our working and communication within the team in order to still get the results that we're getting. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's a negative thing. It's just that we've adjusted the way we work and the way we're capturing properties in order to still be successful. And what I mean by that is because we're having access to the market on a regular basis, we've got the property support team, we're communicating with the coordinators all the time, we've got access to briefs because the system is so open to view in terms of across the company. We can have access to the briefs before we're actually booking the viewing. So the team check their briefs a week in advance. We're making sure that we're going on when we're booking the home searches to make sure that the briefs are in line with realistic expectations and making sure that they are workable. So if we're going to book a home search and the team are looking at the brief and we're going back to the coordinators and saying, look, we've done a search in a similar area with a similar brief and a similar budget in the last week and it's not really worked out. If they were to adjust it by this, this and this, they'd be more successful. And it allows us to be more communicative with the assignee at that point so that they are more aware of the situation currently in the market so that they can adjust their brief accordingly to make it more successful on day one, which is our ultimate goal. And because we're doing stuff, I'm talking mostly London and the surroundings now, but because we're speaking with the agents and we're doing research all the time, we know where the stock levels are best. We know where they're depleted. So if we get a brief from a coordinator and it is specifically in one area that we know that we've struggled with in the last month, we can go back to them and say, look, yes, we can include this area, but it might be a good idea to suggest them at other locations as well. And we've noticed that for a 1-bedroom at this amount that's furnished, the stock levels are good elsewhere in this area. Suggest to them here. And it just opens that conversation a bit more. It allows them to be more informed as a coordinator and informed as an assignee, so that they can then make the best decision in order to have successful home search. So that's how everything ties in, and it allows us to be basically more informative and collective as a team, and so that we are basically sending the same message and the correct one.
So managing expectations as well.
Absolutely.
So if we're doing that from the get-go, then even if, you know, we've made it very clear that, you know, they potentially need to increase their budget, or they should be looking in other surrounding areas if they're not willing to increase their budget, we're setting those expectations from the start. Then if we don't get a lot of viewings on that day, we've done all we can, and we've provided all the information that we have access to, you know, and then to a certain extent, then you know, it is what it is. Something's got to give.
Absolutely.
So but being prepared, isn't it? Is having that information up front allows you to make better decisions, which allows you to get better outcomes, I guess. Sorry, Becca,
I was just going to say, so in answer to your question, the market currently is pretty much the same. You know, things are at the price level they have been. Nothing's really dramatically increased, which is, I suppose, positive. It's not continuing to incline. However, we're not in a season where we would have seen that historically year on year. So I think the time will tell when we get into spring, summer, and prices start fluctuate at that point, because we have obviously a lot of tenancy renewals around that time, because we have a higher number of people moving historically during those, you know, those months. So I suppose we'll see at that point whether there will be an influx in increase in rent. Things have stayed how they have been. I think I would say is a fair suggestion. 6 months, Dani. Everything has really stayed at a similar point in terms of pricing. Stock levels have fluctuated dramatically during that time, but not necessarily as a whole. You know, I wouldn't be able to say, you know, there's been nothing in this time, but there's been loads in another. It just depends on location. And I think that's because people are picking a location that's good at that time and then depleting those stock levels, and then they're just moving on. So at one point, Canary Wharf, there was nothing. And now we're finding
with so much property stock. That's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. And things are, if there is nothing, it means that there's nothing available right now, but things are being advertised more further in advance in order to still capture properties at a time that they will be available. So that lead time is bigger. And Islington and the north surrounding, like Angel Islington, is notoriously difficult for us at the moment, I think. Don't you?
Yeah, 100%. And going back to Canary Wharf, so when I sort of first started doing research, when I first joined Icon, so we're looking at like summer last year, I dreaded a Canary Wharf home search because it didn't matter what the budget was. There was just there just wasn't enough stock there at all. And then recently, I actually quite like the Canary Wharf searches because there is so much. And then, you know, you're looking at sort of 10 to 12 viewings, obviously, you know, fingers crossed. But I have had a 10 to 12 viewing itinerary recently in Canary Wharf. So it just shows how much it's changed. But yeah, I think Angel Islington, as Becca said, has always been a bit tricky for us.
It does show the value of you guys, doesn't it? I mean, the fact that you can actually see that in real time and communicate that back in real time. I mean, that's extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, as obviously Dani said, the viewings in Canary Wharf are fine as long as you've got a move-in date of like April.
Yes, yeah, that's another thing. Yeah.
So although yes, things are a bit better there in terms of stuff that's presented to us, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's enabled to be a quick move-in. So we're still having to, you know, guide the clients and assignees about a time amount that's required in temporary accommodation, and just managing those expectations as well. So things are just changing regularly, which is why it's so important for us to have that communication with coordinators and having a dedicated team that are in the market the whole time, because things are changing so frequently, and ultimately the coordinators don't have time to have that concentrated amount of time speaking to the agents and looking at viewings, because obviously their time's dedicated in guiding and aiding the assignees and having the case files. So the team is definitely growing and being really beneficial to the overall success of the company, which
totally
is
agree
really,
with
really,
that.
really good.
Yeah, no, you guys are amazing. We're you know, I've said it so much. I think we go fantastic. So can I just maybe finish with a little bit of fun? You covered so many areas, but can we sort of pull out some top tips from your perspective, because you are the research experts? What would be some sort of good tips we could share with, say, a relocating assignee who's listening to this and going, okay, what can I do to be proactive? What sort of good tips could I do, or could you sort of suggest to really help them with the success in regards to maybe budgets, timelines, pets, whatever you think is the relevant conversation? Can I ask you for some ideas?
Yeah, Dani, do you want to go ahead first, or?
You start. I'll jump.
Okay.
I'll jump in.
So my stand on this is the same as what it has been previously. I think people need to be open to changing what their ideal is right from the word go. And
Okay.
yes, we can work with a brief that is, this is my ideal, but then the expectations need to be shifted a little bit. It doesn't mean that things aren't there that we can find. It just allows an opportunity to have access to more viewings, to then when you're seeing them in person, it might your ideal might change a little bit. So just being a little bit more optimistic on things, and being open to seeing stuff that might not be in the first instance what you'd really want, but there might be a few tweaks. And then price point, that we're not seeing as much like offering where we're, you need to offer over the asking price, or you've got multiple competing offers. That doesn't seem to be the norm at the moment, where we've got like 4 or 5 competing offers that we then need to go massively over asking price. But just be aware of the price. Don't have a look online for I can get a 1 bed for this amount, because it's not giving you a true story. So just be aware that what you think that you're going to be spending, you're probably going to need to be spending £200 to £300 more a month than you think that you want to spend.
Yeah, I think also building on that, sorry, Becca, I think with the assignees as well, they tend to have, my friend said there's a lot of properties in Islington for £1,500. Well, that just isn't the case. It might have been X amount of years ago, but that's not the case now.
Right.
So it's all well and good their friends' family giving them this advice, but that's not a true representation of the market as it is now. So again, it's that having that open-mindedness and that, flexibility in what they're actually looking for.
Yeah, so it's really understanding what's the market done the last year or so, and making sure you're current in your thinking.
Yeah, absolutely, because things are changing so frequently. And we just, as well, although that we had a point last year where people were having to view independently quite a lot, because the viewing slots just were so rigid, agents weren't flexible when we could do viewings, or not necessarily because of their rigid diaries, just because tenants were only allowing access certain times and stuff like that. Things seem to be a little bit easier on that front, but still be open-minded and flexible in terms of your availability in order to view outside of home search day, because it allows you to have more opportunity to view stuff that is relevant to your brief, which then could have gone if you wait to view it on another dedicated home search day. So just being flexible on their schedule as well is really important, just to be able to view stuff that is suitable.
Right. Okay. So I'm hearing sort of be flexible and be up to date, be current, using information. So probably the two biggest guys for me. Because I just want to say thank you. I also just want to make sure that everybody knows, for any of our relocating clients and assignees, by the way, listening to this, we also have a system called AreaWise, which is a free platform we give to our clients, where they can access all our data. It gives an overview about what stock levels are looking like, average rent ranges. It does mathematical averages in these locations. So if anybody's listening to this and you're about your relocation, when you engage with us, we'll give you free access to this. It's a wealth of data. It's a way of sort of harmonizing or capturing the data that the team here utilize into the system. So please bear that in mind. That's amazing. I really don't think there's much more we can add apart from just a huge thank you to you two, because property support in the last year, I think, has transformed the way that we're finding properties. I can see this. I can looking at the figures and the data here on the other screen. We are finding properties as quick as we were before the housing market exploded, and that's only because of really the efficiency that you guys are bringing. So, purely from my point of view, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. It'd be great fun to come back and revisit this maybe later in the year. So, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, take care of you both, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.